set, fire! 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 Fire!
Ladies, listen, what you need to do right now is go get your husband, go get your boyfriend, go get your teenagers and set them in front of the television. And then you need to leave the room because this program is for men only. Welcome to our program for men only. Now listen, ladies, as I said at the beginning, if you're watching, you need to go get your husband, your boyfriend, your sons, or maybe you just need to hit the DVR and record this because this program is for men only. So ladies, you might have to leave the room because we're talking to men. And our philosophy on this program is there's an eagle and there's a turkey on the inside of every man. And it's the one that gets talked to that usually rises to the ascendancy. So what we're here to do is to talk to the eagle on the inside of men, the moral excellence, the quality on the inside of men. Man, if you're watching, I believe that there's greatness on the inside of you. I believe that there's moral excellence on the inside of you. And if I could say it this way, what you listen to in life, if you listen to stuff that is not of moral excellence and not of quality, you usually end up being like that. But on this program, we're going to challenge you to be the men that God designs you to be men of integrity, be men of honor. And you say, well, you know, I don't know that much about God, or I don't know if I want to have anything to do with God. Then I just even challenge you to watch the program because we're going to challenge that eagle, that greatness on the inside of you. And we happen to believe in a lot of culture today. It's talking to that turkey. And Reverend Chris Holland, he pastors in Indianapolis, but this is a man's man. He's a 5th degree black belt. And we've been having some fun around here and let him beat me up a little bit. But you know, we're men's men. We want to challenge you, men. We want to challenge that excellence. We want to challenge that greatness on the inside of you. And a lot of culture is almost pushing men down and belittling men. And this program, we don't want to belittle women by any means. But what we want to do is challenge men to be men. We need some men today in today's culture.
We need them to stand up and be strong and full of courage and be men.
Yes, sir. And I think if we look a lot in our society, and some of the things I know that I'm doing in our area here is to try to really teach especially young men. We're doing some things with the young men to teach them what manhood looks like, and partly because a lot of fathers are absent. They are, you know, they don't even know who their fathers are, so somebody needs to teach them what a man looks like today.
Well, you know, I appreciate the women of our culture. Yes. I appreciate my wife, but my wife is not a man.
That's right.
And she can teach our boys about courteousness. She has been a wonderful mother, but she's not a man.
That's
and
right.
It takes a man to raise a man.
That's right.
It takes a man to teach a man how to be a man. And so when it comes to raising men, you know, you're probably like me. I had a brother, and when he tried to turn me into a man, it turned into a fight. But when my dad would deal with us, and he would handle us with discipline or deal in our lives, it's part of that is what's inside of me that helped me become what I consider a real man. Jesus was a real man.
That's right.
Very connected to his Father, and his Father was proud of him. And, you know, God the Father spoke over Jesus, not about all the great things he did. He spoke to his very being and said twice in Scripture, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased," and affirmed him. Mm-hmm. So
it took a dad to affirm a son.
Took a dad to affirm a son.
Yeah. Now my dad wasn't there. My dad struggled with alcoholism, but I had an uncle that talked to me.
Yeah.
Now he wasn't always a perfect example, but when I acted like a man, good job. And then when I acted unlike a man, he'd slap me upside the head.
That's right.
But you know, I'm glad I had that in my life. And you know, one of the things we talked about, one of the men that mentored me in, quote, men's ministry or manhood and what have you, was Ed Colin. He made a statement. He said this: one of the most powerful things you can do is create an image, and the second most powerful thing you could do is destroy an image.
Right.
And there used to be an image of what manhood looked like in the United States of America. You know, maybe it was John Wayne. You say that to a younger generation. I mentioned John. They said, "Wayne, isn't that Batman's butler?" You know, no, you know. But you know, the image used to be John Wayne or something like that. And today we've almost lost what that image is, what manhood looks like. And part of the aim of this program is to challenge that, to paint a picture maybe of what manhood looks like today, because I believe if you put an image, if you put a standard up, I believe that there are men out there, just like those watching today. Man, I believe that standard gets put up. I believe that there will be men that'll reach for that standard.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's what we're trying to do with this program. Now, Chris, one of the things we talked about, the Ed Cole, you know, that manhood myth stuff.
Right.
He talked about part of the characteristics of that eagle, that man of honor, man of integrity, is he needs a balance between two things. He needs a balance between the tenderness and the toughness. Now, in a previous program, we talked about the toughness side, how to develop some toughness, and sometimes guys are a little bit more acquainted with that, and we talk about the difference between meanness and anger and true toughness, that internal strength to push through some things. But one of the other sides that a man needs to be that man of quality, that man of integrity, is also a tender side. And, you know, we'll come back in the next segment and begin talking about that, some of the places where man needs to be tender. And I'm going to use my example of what I've seen when I think of a man's tenderness, because, and I'm not just talking being in touch with your feminine side. Some people,
right, yeah.
I'm talking about that tenderness of heart. And we'll be back in a moment. We're going to start talking about that and how maybe some men can have some tenderness, because they might be strong, but do they have the tenderness
That's awesome.
that they need with their wife, with their kids? Maybe in society today where those things might come in. And because you're a man, I ask you here, because you're that 5th degree black belt, but I've also seen the tender side. I've seen your heart. And so you seem to have that balance in your life. So we'll be back in a few moments, man. You'll get to hear from a 5th degree black belt talking not only about being tough, but tender.
Okay. So you trap with the hands against, again, the joint. Joint and turn. There you go. So you can see that the hand's going, this hand's not going to go backwards there's only so far it can go backwards. So when you push in, right? When you push in, and then you can turn. You can drop straight down. You can drop straight down and then turn. And you have control of the arm, you have control of the side. So, let me try this.
We're back here at our program for men only. We're actually here at the Muskegon Taekwondo Center on Apple Avenue. We're taping here, partly because, Chris, you're 5th degree black belt, where you guys might get to see him throwing me around or twisting me around or what have you in some of our segments here. But, you know, we're here talking about manhood, calling for the eagle on the inside of men. And we talked about in the previous segment that there's two sides to maybe some of the qualities of that eagle. Two sides that a man needs to have a proper balance.
Absolutely.
The balance between tenderness and toughness. And
well, you know, an eagle's beak is used to destroy prey or to protect, but it's also used to help preen the little baby chicks that are in the nest.
Ooh.
And to provide the security and the comfort that those little baby chicks need when they're in the nest and they are under the care of that father eagle or that mother eagle. So there's dual purposes in our life. The same heart that is the heart of a champion is also the same heart that's a heart of compassion. Mm-hmm. So the Bible records that even Jesus was moved with compassion. It was a moving force in his heart where he was able to show tenderness to a child, even though he was able to scourge the people who were full of hypocrisy in the temple. So Jesus had a very strong man side to him, but he also had a very tender move with compassion for the needs of people.
Excellent. Well, another example, I see this, you know, I like football. I like watching the Super Bowl. I think one of the examples to me of tenderness and toughness is I've seen these big 300+ pound football players, and they're, you know, they're on the sidelines, the game's just about over, and they realize they're about to win the Super Bowl. Yeah. And then at the end, I see they've got their kids around them.
Oh, yeah.
And you see, and you can see that here's this guy that has been in the trenches. He might be bloody and hurting, but then here at the end of the game, he's got his son on his shoulder, and you can somewhat see that man, here I am, you know, I might have been through war, but I want to enjoy this with my son or my daughter. And you can see in his eyes that he's gone from being warrior to now I'm dad.
Yeah.
And there's that balance. I mean, you know, something about that I thought, man, that's a picture. There's a side that's tough, but then there's that side that with the kids that you know, wanting to just enjoy and love on them, and that balance there.
Absolutely, and even with your wife, with your spouse, that there's a time when you as a man need to understand the needs of your family. Many times we can run and do everything hour after hour after hour because we're tough and we just gruel through. But there's been times that I've looked over at my wife and I could tell in her, just from her look, from her body, that she needs rest. She needs a time of rest. So there's been many times when I've set up a little place for her to go, pack a little overnight bag for her, grab her CD player with some of her favorite CDs and come home, say, babe, I've got you packed, you're ready to go. Well, what do you mean? I could just tell you need some rest. And I want to send you away just for an overnight by yourself. I'll take the boys, I'll work with them, deal with them, get them to bed. Not now, I mean, they're grown now, but back in those days. And there's that tenderness side where you could almost push past that for your wife, say, oh, she's got to be tough as I am. But she's tough in her own right. But there's that part of you that says, she has needs, I want to meet those needs equal to my own. Or greater than my own, and become the servant.
Yeah, I remember one time, now you talk about your wife, I remember my daughter, my oldest daughter, Kelly, I think she was about 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, and we put her in, it was a Christian school. And I remember one day I got a call from the school that she was just having a rough day. And you know, there's a side, the tough side of a dad is, oh, suck it up, girl, come on. You know, but you know, I think I just went and got a Coke or something. I went over to school and we just sat down on a step in the back, and I let her share her heart, you know, and you know, that there's that tough side that, oh, come on, girl, you know, but then there's that tender side that my daughter just needs some daddy time.
Yeah, you know, one time with my youngest son Preston, he had disobeyed and was in trouble, and at our house we believed in paddling, you know, and discipline, and so it was time for him to have a paddle. And you know, actually the boys, you know, prayed for me to go ahead and paddle them, because first we talked about why it was wrong, and son, this is why we don't do that, and you're better than this, you're smarter than, you're wiser than this, but as I started to discipline him, I felt that in my heart, this is one time I should show him mercy. And the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to show your son mercy so that he understands when I show him mercy, he's going to see it through you. And I'll never forget when he looked up at me with his little eyes. And when I said, I'm not going to paddle you this time, son, because I want you to understand that there's a mercy side to God. Every time in your life you've disobeyed me, you've been punished. But this time, I'm going to take your punishment for you, and I'm not going to punish you. That child cried harder on that day. Actually, we both did some crying.
I don't know if they can see it. You got tears in your eyes.
Yeah, because I remember the look on his face of, I can't believe you're doing this. And that's that tenderness that you need to show even your children, your wife. There was times when my wife, you know, when we lost our children, when she miscarried, and the most difficult phase of our life. And you can deal with just your own feelings and push past it, and you know, well, you just have to get over it. But man, my heart was, my baby's hurting. This is my sweetheart. This woman didn't marry anybody in the world but me. I don't know why, but she did.
We're still wondering.
And just to put your arms around her and tell her it's going to be okay, man, that builds a strong marriage. That makes that woman, woo! You want to talk about some kissing now. Oh, buddy. Hey,
let's keep this G-rated.
Let's keep it G-rated. Hallelujah.
Listen, we're going to be back in a few moments. We're going to have a Man of Honor moment with Tony Rory. You'll want to stay tuned for that. And then we'll come back and talk some more about the tender side of a man.
Hi, this is Tony Rory with Men of Honor, and I'm coming to you today to talk to you about the Men of Honor program, where we mentor and train young men ages 11 to 17 in principles of honor and integrity. You know, one of the things that we teach them is that the knights of old always stood for something outstanding called chivalry, and chivalry has to do with showing honor to ladies. That's opening the door for ladies, reaching out and helping everywhere that you can, and showing respect. It seems like the trend of today is showing dishonor and disrespect for ladies, but as Men of Honor, we're bringing it back in a strong way. So I want to challenge you today, be a man of honor, show chivalry to ladies. God bless you.
All right, we're back here again. We're at the Muskegon Taekwondo Center on Apple Avenue. We've just been having fun here, and I'm here with Chris Holland. He's a pastor in Indianapolis, and we're talking about that balance that an eagle, and as we said earlier in the program, that this program is designed to call for the eagle on the inside of men, and that part of the qualities that man needs to have, a quality man needs to have, is they need the toughness, and we talked about that in a previous program. They need that internal fortitude, that strength to make it through some things. And a man needs to develop that. But on the same hand, a man needs to develop that tenderness. He needs a balance between that tenderness and toughness. Now, I shared in the previous segment that, football players have been, Super Bowl, these guys that have been in the trenches and they've been at war, and then they've got their sons or what have you on their shoulders. And I think another picture is some of our warriors. I've seen, we've got pictures of some of our warriors, whether in Iraq, Afghanistan, they've been through firefights or been through stuff, and then they're holding a baby, or they're taking care of one of their comrades, or they're doing something.
Absolutely.
And how in a sense they can go from this fierce warrior to then taking care of one of their men, or taking care of a child or something that's been hurt, and that balance in there.
What you go through in life, in the tough moments, I believe, honestly prepares you for moments of compassion and tenderness. I was a two-time cancer survivor, and at a facility I worked at, there was a man there that had contracted throat cancer in his larynx, and we talked back and forth. He lost the ability to speak. But he was just a great man. He was one of the best body shop managers I'd ever been around. I worked for Ford Motor Company at the time in service management, and he was a tremendous body shop repairman. And in the last stages, it came back, and in the last stages of his life, I went to see him, and he had never, he wasn't a religious man. He didn't go to church. He didn't do all those things. But I went to visit him the night before he died, in his hospital room, and here I am. He's wasted away literally to nothing. I'm this big kid, and he's laying there, and that's not a moment when you say, "Come on, you can fight one more day. You can get up from there." What I had experienced and gone through just came pouring out of me with compassion. I shared with him the wonderful gift of salvation through Jesus Christ, and so he wanted to ask Jesus into his heart, but he was so weak he couldn't sit up in the bed. And I'll never forget literally getting beside of him in the bed, lifting him up in my arms and holding him like a child for him to write in some of his last moments of energy, "I want you to pray with me for salvation." That wasn't a time to be a drill sergeant or yell in his ears, "You're going to make it." That was a time to help a man with a moment of tenderness and kindness and compassion. I didn't walk out of the room and go, "Man, I'm grossed out by that. I can't do that," or "Oh, this is too weird." And I literally held him in my arms while he wrote on a notepad, and then he answered all of my questions. Some of them kind of scrawled out to the right as his arm would lose the strength. And that next morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, he went into eternity. And I believe, and I'm not saying that just because that's my story, but I believe a real man knows when to show that toughness and when to show that tenderness, when to show that discipline, when to show that mercy, when to show pride, be proud of your children, proud of your wife, when to show humility as a man, and being able to surrender some of that tough swagger, for some loving tenderness.
And that balance, I mean, that's what makes a man strong. I mean, sometimes being tender, sometimes it doesn't seem like strength.
Right.
You know, it doesn't sometimes seem like strength, you know, when those tender times, like you talked about your wife or about our children, you know, or maybe it's on the job when somebody may deserve to be fired or what have you, but maybe that tenderness is you give them another chance.
That's right.
And I know that, you know, pastoring, you have people that it's leadership. You're leading people. And sometimes I know that maybe I've been too gracious, but I'll never forget one of my leaders came to me and, you know, we dealt with a situation and maybe people felt that I gave a certain person too much grace, you know, maybe a little bit too tender, doing my best to believe in them. And one of my leaders came to me and said, Pastor Tim said, you know, I guess if I'd rather have you err on the side of hardness or on the side of tenderness or softness, he said, I think I'd rather have you err on that side. And it was interesting, he said, because there might be some time I need that side of you.
That's right.
You know, and so he said, you know, so I think that, you know, there's a side, there's a side of, come on, we don't quit, we make it through, we go through, you know, and come on, get up. I mean, there's a side, as men, we need to hear that.
Absolutely.
But on the other side, there's also that tenderness that, you know, our pastor, and I'll never forget. He was Marine Recon, 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a sniper, high-end Marine. I mean, had killed people and things like that in warfare. But I'll never forget one time I was with him, and a couple in his church, their father had died, one of their fathers had died. And here's this tough, strong Marine. And I watched him go up to this couple, put his arms around, and just tears streaming down his face. And I'll never forget that look that I saw on his face. This tough man, that all the strength, I mean, he once a Marine, always a Marine. But seeing that tender side come out, I'll never forget that picture.
No.
It marked my life.
Actually, there are stories where that same man would send word back to those who fell in the battlefield on the other side to their families, and would tell them, for their children's sake, your dad died in combat as an honorable man. And many of his comrades say, why are you doing that? This is the enemy. And he said, but to his family, he's a husband and a father. So on one side, he may have been the one who actually took this man's life. But on the other side, he was also a man full of compassion to say, there's a wife at home, there's children at home on the other side of this thing that think about this man the same way my wife and children are thinking about me right now. See, and that is some deep compassion right there, man. What honor. What honor. Man.
Listen, boy, this just got good. That was deep. That was real good. Listen, we're going to be back in a few moments, and we'll close up today's program and talk real quickly about how you might develop some of that tenderness in your life.
A very simple deterrent is a finger, just a finger right there, and you can back a big guy up fast, or a thumb. Sometimes the thumb's a little stronger because you have more strength in your hand with the thumb than you would a finger, unless it's a trained finger. You know, one that you've worked throwing spear hands for many years. But these are just little self-defense things that can make a very big difference. A very, very big difference. Step in here. Okay, remember we're talking about toughness?
Yeah.
You could show some right now.
What you said, the collarbone, right?
Mm-hmm. Collarbone. And just
hook
and drop. Just hook and drop.
All right, now he's not dropping.
Okay. Well,
once again, we're here at the Muskegon Taekwondo Center on Apple Avenue in Muskegon, Michigan, and we've been talking about that side of tender and tough, and I'm here with Chris Holland. He pastors in Indianapolis. Now, Chris, we're going to close up. We just got a few minutes because we've gone long in some of these segments. How can a man develop some tenderness in his life? What are some things that he might do that might help him to be more tender rather than just tough?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that enables you to show tenderness is what you value.
Okay.
When a man understands what he values most in life, he has the ability to show tenderness towards that. I've watched men, and you have too, that have a sports car they waited for all of their life, or I was a hot rodder, a hot rod, and man, they'll pet that car. My wife one time scolded me. She said, "I think you love that Trans Am more than you do me."
Ooh.
And what that told me, as I learned, is that really she felt like I treated that car better or more precious or more tender with it than I did her. And so I learned, if a man values his wife, he can show tenderness. If he values his children, he can show tenderness. If he values his parents and honors them, he's tender towards them. I think you were telling the story about...
Yeah, I knew of an individual that this person really struggled with alcoholism and really struggled in their life, and they'd been through marriages, and they'd abused their wives and things like that, and just been a mess. But I remember talking with this individual, and I'd never seen any tenderness in his life till he talked about one day he had a dog that had gotten rabies, and he had to shoot that dog and kill that dog. And he said, "Man, I just started crying when I shot that dog." And I thought,
see, isn't that something?
So it's like, so apparently there's some tenderness there in the human, if I could say it this way, soul or psyche, someplace in there. There's some tenderness in there.
Yeah.
But you're saying that whatever we value, if there's a level of value in there, that tenderness will come out.
Well, the Bible says that a man that loves his wife loves him like his own flesh, and he nourishes her and cherishes her, which those two phrases, nourish and cherish, that is taking care of. That is tenderly treating her as precious as you would your own. You don't want to hurt her, damage her any more than you would want to your own body. So when you're showing that manly nature, you don't mind some nourishing and some cherishing.
You see, one of the things that I think of is there's a scripture in the Bible. Men, I want to talk to you for a second. Listen, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that God knows how to take a heart of stone and make it a heart of flesh, something that's hard. And I've seen some men that are hard, but God knows how to take that heart that is hard, that soul that is hard, and make it tender once again. And what I've seen in a number of men's life, because that man we talk about that mentored us in men's ministry, he has a saying, and it goes like this: manhood and Christ-likeness are synonymous.
That's right.
God is not against you being tough, but he does want you to have a tender heart. And one of the ways you can get a tender heart is by making Jesus Christ the Lord of your life and becoming the man that God created you to be. And then your heart becomes tender and soft. And you not only, because God doesn't want you to become feminine and overly sensitive. You need strength to be a man, but you also need that tender side. And there are a lot of men, because of what's happened in life, that they're hard on the inside. And I'm here to tell you there's an answer called Jesus Christ. And if you'll call out to him, the Bible says, whosoever will call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. We hope you enjoyed today's program. Tune in again for our program for men only.
Your body changes, and there's not a lot you can do about that. But here's the thing. You have power at your point of extension is the point of your greatest power. So wherever my foot lands, that's where the point of my greatest power is going to be. If it's 3 foot off the ground, I'm going to break or try my best to break through whatever's 3 foot off the ground. But everything I'm going to do my best to inflict as much pain as possible. I'm not going to take it easy on you because I don't want to hurt you. If you're an aggressor and you're coming after my family, or you're coming after my wife, or you seriously, I see in your eyes that you have an intent of bodily harm to me, I'm not playing games with you anymore.